you 100% should aim to invite resistance in. Now, I know that may sound strange in and of itself because resistance doesn't feel great in the moment. Resistance shows us where we need to grow. Let's say, for example, you've been manifesting a text. You've been affirming all day, perfectly fine. You could do it till the cows come home. But then you try to affirm for a relationship. And all of a sudden, you feel resistance. You feel icky. You feel like you're lying to yourself. You don't feel great. What does this show us? Well, it shows us that we can align with a text. We can align with the state of consciousness that shows that we have received that text. But when it comes to a relationship, we can't align with that. We feel resistant towards us. It doesn't feel like our truth. Now, take into consideration how the subconscious mind works. The subconscious mind pushes out more of what you are claiming to be true through your state of consciousness, through whatever method you like, visualization, affirmation, whatever. If you feel resistant toward being in a relationship, if you feel like you can't affirm it because it's lying to yourself, doesn't feel great, and so on, what is this showing the subconscious mind? This is showing the subconscious mind that we actually are not one with that outcome. Text, yeah, sure, we could do that all day, but relationship, maybe not so much. Now, is this a problem? No, it's actually a good thing because it shows us why maybe we haven't received our outcome so far. If we get more of what we are, and we are not able to align with being in a relationship because we're resistant towards claiming it, then clearly we are that which doesn't have the relationship, which may be why our experiences have reflected that. This resistance shows us where we're falling flat. But what typically tends to happen, and I've done this myself as well, I can tell you a story about it in a minute, but what typically tends to happen is we get up to that resistance point and then go, actually, no, I don't like that. I'm going to go back down to texts, or I'm going to go back down to them thinking about me, or that they love me, or something like that. This just keeps us going up to that point and falling back, up to that point and falling back. And we never actually break through that resistance and therefore never actually make ourselves one with that desired outcome. Now, resistance in and of itself isn't singular to manifestation. Think about going to the gym. You don't build muscle during those first 6 reps that are super duper easy because your muscles are rested. You build muscle when you start to tear the muscles and they recover. You build muscle when you get to the point where it's a struggle and you do it anyway. You do more anyway. Runner's high, for example. You get to a point where you feel like you're about to collapse. All of a sudden the endorphins kick in and you can go for another bloody 10 miles or something. There are so many different instances, obviously those are physical activity, but there are loads of instances where getting to that point where your body wants to stop or something feels resistant and then pushing past is the reward point. This is what resistance is. Resistance is nothing more than your body and mind essentially saying, this next section, not familiar. But if we stick with what's familiar, we'll get what has always been familiar. Familiar doesn't mean good. Familiar just means something you're used to experiencing. So if you can't claim the relationship or that job that's high qualifications or that home or whatever it is, because you feel resistant to claiming it, that just means that you're familiar. What feels comfortable to claim is everything less than having that point. Now, of course, I'm not going to say you're never going to get to it, things happen, but at least this is a baseline that we should go off of when manifesting. If we get to that resistance point, that should be your moment of excitement, not fear. That should be your moment of, this is what needs work, not, I'm going to stay away from that. But of course, there are ways to work through resistance that are better than others. There are 2 ways that I personally work through resistance and that I feel works best. The first one is taking a slight step back, but still being broad with that topic. What I mean by this is, if I get to a point where claiming a relationship feels a lot of resistance and I don't feel good in that moment doing it, I will claim relationship-based things, but maybe not so specific to the actual desire itself, until I get myself into a more empowered mode, until I feel like, actually, yeah, I could do this, and then I get specific. For example, I've been affirming to be in a loving relationship. I'm in a loving, passionate, committed relationship with Katie. I've been affirming this. I feel it in my chest a little bit icky. I just feel like I'm lying to myself. I feel silly. I feel all of these things. So I'll take a slight step back and say, I'm good enough to have a loving relationship with Katie. I'm worthy and deserving of a loving relationship with Katie. I am actually an extremely good option for Katie. And I will essentially bring it back a little bit to go a little bit more broad. Not necessarily claim that that experience is mine right now, but things that add value to the idea that it could be possible. I'm good enough for it. I'm worthy of it. I'm the best option of it, for example. And then when I feel empowered, when I actually feel like, actually, yeah, you know what? I can do this. Like, why wouldn't I be the option? Why wouldn't we get in this relationship? And I start feeling like I'm a little bit more empowered and a little bit more oomphy with it. Then I'll go back into, I'm in a loving, committed, passionate relationship with Katie, or things of that general nature. And by doing this, what I find happens is, it's kind of like trying to chop a tree down with a blunt axe. You've just gone straight at it, not really going anywhere. You can see that it's just not going to work out. So instead, you've taken a step back to sharpen that axe. In this case, sharpen your mind, get yourself into a better state of mind. And then you've gone back at it with a sharper axe, and you can cut that tree down. You've gone for the affirmations of being in a relationship. You realize that it's not quite going to work out for you in that moment because your state is too aligned to the 3D and how it's not working. And then you've taken a step back, you've sharpened your mind through more general affirmations, but still to do with the topic, still to empower yourself. And then you've gone straight back at it and you've done better because you're coming from a better state of mind. You're coming from a more empowered state of mind. And this for me is, or was, I don't experience it as much anymore, but this for me was a big thing when working through resistance. There was things with my business, obviously I mentioned a second ago that I'll tell you a story. I spent quite a lot of time in my first business because I'm actually a qualified piercer, and I had a business and I was terrified of actually running it, essentially. Terrified. Anytime that I'd have a piercing client, I would basically panic, worry that it's going to go bad, fear. Anytime I tried to tell myself that I could do it and that I'm qualified, so why wouldn't I be able to, my mind was just absolutely just kicking my ass, essentially. So what I ended up doing was I took a little bit of a step back. Now, this was actually before I even really knew about manifestation. I'd heard it a little bit, but never really actually put it into practice. So a lot of what I'm actually saying here is stuff that was more luckily stumbled on, as opposed to like, I know manifestation, this stuff works. But I would go back to going, okay, I may not necessarily be a massively experienced piercer, but I am qualified. I was clearly good enough for them to provide me the certificate to pass the course to become a piercer. I had clearly had a lot of interest in it. I had all the right equipment. Basically, everything was there for me to succeed. You know, how hard is it to line a dot up and stab someone in the ear, for example? And upon doing this, eventually I got to a point where I was like, actually, no, today will be fine. I don't need to worry about it. It's only a nose piercing. It's only an ear piercing. Like, it's not a problem. And upon just reminding myself of this, I eventually got to a point where I actually felt quite confident. And I actually did an industrial piercing, which is like the bar between this part and this part of the ear. And that was my first ever industrial piercing, and it was borderline perfect. And they are they are advocated as a fairly difficult piercing to pierce because you can quite easily fold the ear and stuff like that. And it was perfect. But that didn't come from me just going, I'm an amazing piercer. It came from taking a step back and saying, actually, but look at all this evidence that suggests that I can do this. And then upon doing that, I got better and better and better. And I was manifesting without even knowing it. And then once I did that industrial piercing, it was like, obviously I know we shouldn't look to the 3D for validation, but at this time I didn't really know about manifesting very well. But it was the validation that I needed to say, actually, yes, I am a good piercer. And from there, my business exploded. So much so that I actually shut down the business because I had too many clients and the stress was getting to me, which that's a good thing clearly, but it's one of those things that obviously due to manifestation, I started seeing myself as a good piercer, good enough, worthy enough, successful, and it all came rolling in. So much so that I was just having no spare time and it was freaking me out and I shut it all down. But this is an example of where going straight into a relationship, or in this case, a piercing job, being like the best at it, wasn't quite working with me up here. So I took a little step back, gave myself justifiable reasons to say, well, why couldn't this work out? And upon residing in this space, then it was easier for me to say, and it has worked out. Do the same with your situation. Chip away at that resistance block a little, piece by piece, as opposed to maybe just sitting there and going, actually, no, I feel resistance to that, and taking a complete step back. But the other way is definitely for the more disciplined and more ready for a challenge kind of people. And this is to just keep going anyway. Think of resistance like a strong gust of wind going against you as you're walking down the road. What I've just given you is kind of like taking a seat and waiting for the wind to die down a little bit. Then you can just carry on going. But what a lot of people do when it comes to resistance is they'll go, oh no, wind, and then they'll go with it. They'll just let it blow them back down the street. But their destination is at the other end of the street. So in actuality, they just let the resistance win, and now they're further away from their desire than if they'd just stayed still, basically, or taken a seat to the side and gone a bit more general. But a strong gust of wind, unless it's like a hurricane, because I know someone's probably going to comment something smart, you can push through. Resistance is the same. If you have a disciplined mind and if you're willing to put in the work for the challenge, keep affirming anyway. Keep visualizing anyway. Keep pushing against that wind. You will eventually get to where you want to be. If you find that your mind is saying, nope, can't do it, nope, can't do it, nope, can't do it, but you'll keep going back to it and saying, but we already have, but we already have, but we already have, it's going to get to a point where you have chipped away at that block long enough with this new story where it goes, okay, we've already done it. You have told me, whether through affirmation or visualization or whatever it is that you're doing, that it's done enough for me to go, maybe it is actually done. This whole story that I've been having, maybe it just isn't true at all. You have eventually overwritten that story with the new sense of self, with the new state of consciousness, by simply pushing through. Like I said, this is for the more disciplined people and people that want a challenge, because resistance in and of itself doesn't feel great in the moment, so pushing through can sometimes not necessarily be the most comfortable thing to do. But just like the gym example and the running example, that pushing through leads to a greater high at the end. That pushing through leads to the success in the end. So if you find yourself lying to yourself or feel like you're lying to yourself, that's only because that's what your subconscious mind doesn't hold true. So if you keep claiming it as true, eventually it will take over. Think of resistance, if you want another example, like the little box that comes up on a laptop when you try to overwrite a file that says, are you sure you want to do this? If you go with the resistance, you're just clicking no and keeping the original file. That's not what you want to do. But if you go through the resistance, or at the very least take a side step and go a bit more general and then get back into it and you feel more empowered, then that is the equivalent of saying, yes, overwrite this file. And then you are replacing the old file with the new one, and your subconscious mind will have to use it to create your reality. Resistance is a good thing. Resistance equals growth. Growth will lead to a new state of comfort and familiarity. And when you have a new state of comfort and familiarity, your reality will be based off of that comfort and familiarity, because that's where you reside dominantly. That's where your state of consciousness naturally goes back to. So if you push through that resistance, on the other side is your desired outcome. So stop letting it get you down. Stop thinking that because you've reached that point of resistance, there's nothing you can do about it. There's plenty you can do about it. And if you do just do something about it, your desire is yours. Your new life that you desperately want, that you keep wanting to affirm for, but step back when you reach that point of resistance, it is yours. I really hope this video has helped. If it has, drop me a like and a comment to push it on the algorithm and help more people like it's helped you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and be sure to click that bell icon, because sometimes YouTube doesn't recommend my videos and I may say something that's just going to change your life. But thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.